don't know, I have to look and see how many juniors he have right now.
I think it's quite a bit.
Yeah, so if he, is he just biology, chemistry?
Just biology.
Just biology, okay.
I will
Chemistry
say
doesn't
one
get as
thing,
much.
one thing he's gonna ask you is he's gonna ask if you have any data on the tutoring program. Like,
Yeah, we do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, they sign in.
Basically, he wanted to know like how
How many students are coming? I can show him what time they're
You
coming.
can even ask for class and just say, like Angela was like,
Just not
2 students have come.
It's not a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not a
and then
lot.
with us, I mean, we can say like LA's interacting students every single
Every
class,
day.
so
Yeah.
they're
Stay
interacting with students
co-host.
twice a week,
Yeah.
almost all of their
A
students.
lot of the departments now are going by
Stay
schedule.
co-host. I guess it's letting me log in. Well, what does that mean for me?
Schedule the state. These are time, right? Which is
Can I open it from 2 different devices?
Right,
They're
like the kind of on the
Let's
Let's
call.
look at participants. Yeah, I'm in as 2 different
But if he
documents. I'm gonna mute myself.
instead of them sitting and realize that way. But yeah, I'll print off all that stuff.
And then LAs are like, so we know we.
The
they
current
can
thing
still,
we have
they
right
can
now.
still have an hour or 2 of time, like they can just function as a director and
Yeah.
encourage their students.
I have more, I ordered more.
And
this
then if
summer.
you have those special
Oh, great,
things, like
great, great,
when you start.
Hi,
to figure
welcome.
out these other tutors can still, they can also be, so you can
Yeah.
still align
Yeah.
funding in that area, but to distribute those more effectively, especially if you see that there are better gains.
Yeah.
Using in this format that,
Yeah,
especially with biology.
Do you know the budget for next semester?
It's gonna be the same.
Okay.
Cut and paste.
Okay, so do you know what an SI is class?
Oh.
Wow.
I was,
I'll
Erin
have
sent
to
me a
look and see
picture of you
that, but
accepting.
Cause I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, I was
just
just
like-
trying to tell my neighbor, I was like, I'm not gonna win, don't worry about it, and then I call my neighbor.
Well, and I know the amount of LEs.
Yeah, and I saw your poster, like, it looked nice, so.
So
Yeah, that was the
I'll
one
send out
thing
the schedule
that
right to
they
LAs.
said, that I actually followed
Yeah, I send it up to the
directions. They were
SI, so like,
posted,
yeah.
just what we were supposed
I
to
send it
do.
to
You
SI
are
so
supposed to,
that,
and my
while
lab
they
is
can work with that.
Yeah.
So, I was like, thank you
Yeah.
for following.
You can work around it.
That's
When
what-
an
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think I put them down.
Right, you did, you did.
Yeah.
But they've been asking like, can I do an extra? If they have students who want the extra sessions, then.
Yeah, so it's hard because sometimes.
My lab was notable.
Yeah.
Yeah, my lab was.
But it's hard to do like something like that, but like a lot of.
Yeah. So I always ask
Yeah.
like, how many? And it's like, oh, 6 or 7, or,
Yeah.
you know, that amount, then it's fine.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, so we have,
Took the time
the
to
LAs
finish my
that I-
lab logo designer. And, I get it done, so.
Oh, because we're
Before we
funding
had, like,
only
we're
grade
funding
for
online.
through the CERS budget. Do you know if Matt is still gonna?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I was
Okay.
presenting
I
my
most
first
likely
one.
will.
And then Matt covers it, and then Dave will, yeah. And Angela's willing to also.
Liz Barnes is research, you know, that you
And
can't
I'm
just
using a different model that I.
force people to change.
She'll do training for biology.
Well, like.
Yeah.
And their values.
And I went all the way through, I was like,
Biology and stuff.
Yeah,
I know that
So I
they.
just took the whole.
I'm excited that you might be joining the
Okay.
research course.
So it's what they're in 2 seconds. So I'm gonna try to split that up, but I also am gonna.
Okay.
I mean, it's not.
But I think that they already gave you permission, so
Okay.
if you decide that you want to take it.
But I'm trying to have the LA to be CRN, because I think.
Heather,
their
do you
training
think that
is, like,
you're ever gonna
maybe
take
a bit
science
more
communication
than
course?
just like the
I don't
discussions we're
know,
having.
right now the goal
And I
is
have,
for me to take,
some really good ideas, like
Dr.
like
Armour's R
pairing
course.
them.
Oh,
and each
because I
week
still have to
they'll-
get my
they
stats
will
in.
come up with discussion
And then,
questions,
yeah.
so we'll have discussion.
Yeah.
So they have to read a bit more in
If
depth.
that
Yeah.
doesn't fit,
They'll still do
though,
their reflections, but then I have an
right
idea
now.
for reflections.
It's
to
hard
compare
because
discussion.
all of my faculty
Because
actually.
someone that I know
somewhat
is
more
this
or
or like
else
for
too.
business
So
class. And
scheduling
like,
is difficult.
you don't just like respond to certain classmates.
So there's a
Oh, what's your
possibility
form
I
of
will
discussion?
empty
And it's very
track.
structured.
Oh,
and,
so
like,
Fanya, Brad and
Okay.
So, anyway,
Brad also
Okay.
but I
loves
think
ag.
that'll
So
it'll
ag
help with
placed him in a lab
when I
that
take
links
over,
with something
because
that
it's
I
like
had in
facilitated learning, not like.
which
yeah,
usually
every-
means I take
Just
Right.
like.
Yeah.
Fanya was in our class last year. Yeah. I know.
Hello. Our Lady.
I
She
mean, they
declined.
all tell us.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm still gonna
Ask,
No, I'm not. I just.
But yeah, that doesn't
I'm
work
going
out.
to propose to just get a. This is really working.
Yeah, like.
I saw it.
Had a lot more grad
This
students.
is a lot, so I'm supposed to
Last year was
have-
mostly undergrad.
I can't.
Undergrad and degree.
No, I
This
know,
year we
yeah.
already have more grads.
Well, that's like.
Are they
some of
all
the LA
busy?
stuff, it's like,
Yeah.
no, I.
Oh, good.
Actually,
Actually,
just.
I'm
Yeah.
It's not even
Yeah.
like this is right.
Yeah. So that's what.
But yeah,
I'm
what's great about it is
just
you can actually learn art. It's not enough to force out credit for it.
Yeah.
But, and it's optional. So
Every
like,
time I
when we
stop,
get to the point where we're analyzing data, we're gonna have qualitative analysis and quantitative analysis. And we basically
At this
say,
point, I
if
just
you wanna
added
learn R, Mary will
I just added
teach you
one
R
yesterday
to
and then
analyze the.
earlier this day.
Okay.
So it's time for classes,
You don't want to.
which I
so-
figured they
But
probably
that-
just said, you know.
that could
Sarah
help.
said on the
Yeah,
front
it's
end,
happened when I
just
started.
realized that they have, so they just jumping in now.
When I
and
decided to
realize
our question. I don't know where that.
But it's still,
But she
I
didn't
had to
always
stop,
pick that
I gotta make it up, put it in session.
Yeah.
Your
Go back and
class,
forth
that
with
way.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I can.
There you
get
go.
someone
Yeah, and
that's
we'll
coordinating
probably be
efforts,
doing,
then
I mean, we'll be doing script and statistics in R, obviously, and then.
Do you do training again
So.
in the spring, if
For the-
it's
for the
new,
spring?
if it's new.
Okay,
Yeah.
cause I'll probably have new LAs.
And I would just say it's.
Do
that.
that. That'd be
We're
great.
talking about
More
funding, but
if
if
not,
not, I'll just make sure I
build it
tell
up.
them.
We're gonna
It's
have
all about. it's
Yeah.
not communication, it's about
Yeah.
funding.
I really want
Right? So we get really comfortable with each other and sharing, like, our experiences with people and our own beliefs and. Cause if you
I know.
forget.
I know.
Get running design all of this stuff, but there is, there is,
Absolutely.
there is so much additional training.
Speaking of Angela Google.
Yeah, we were just.
Oh,
talking-
okay.
A face to the name.
Yeah. We were just talking about you.
Oh, okay.
I am still so tired.
Sorry, everybody's talking to Angela.
Popular.
We were just talking about you. This is, Janelle Lindsay.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, hey, look, I
Yes, yes, yes.
We were talking about like expanding into biology and then we should talk about training.
I don't know what's in our meeting with Dave. I don't know when is the best time to start trying to think about how to have incentives for.
Oh, for training? I mean, so my incentive is that my load doesn't have to be. not- It can be between 6 and 9. That's like the thing that we worked out, and I think that just has to be approved by Craig and Pat. And the teaching needs of the department.
Yeah, that's the hard. But also, if we can't do teaching load, then monetary incentive would be great too.
Yeah, for the department, so I don't know.
Yeah. Right? So that would be.
Welcome.
Okay.
I'm good. How are you
She,
doing?
this is
For now,
Yes.
for semester.
this
I got
is,
some
she took
that
it,
semester.
like, this extra time.
Yeah, I think it's just hard.
I was good at it.
It was busy, but it was.
It's okay.
They
Even if
never
they
told me that I
have-
came in and I wanted to ask.
Like,
My
I
wife and I
didn't
asked
present
them,
the way
and
they
then
have
they
they
did
focus
this.
more of.
Because it's like Dr. Strayer.
It's not even, not a credit.
It was like, that was before that. Like, it's like, that's something that like, you said you tested, I was like, I
So
don't know.
that was
So,
the,
like,
yeah.
let's see.
The networking. I'm an introvert, not an extrovert, so that.
But I remember looking at that. and being like,
Yeah,
okay.
it does. So it was a different
So,
kind of time. It was a more like, okay, like we got a chance to get Sarah and to have like some of that actually just apply.
Yeah,
So
I think that could be
that
really
was
nice.
different.
Yeah,
Because
second.
I know this feeling.
I'm gonna briefly introduce you and then I'll monitor the Zoom room from
Great.
over here. So we've got some things.
I was talking to.
Do we
Is
need
that-
like mic or?
It's, you are Mike.
Oh, okay.
Yep, you are Mike.
See?
Yeah.
Is there video, like, is there video too? I just, like, am I in the way? That's what, okay.
Nope, you're good. You're good. The video is capturing this.
Okay.
Whoever's up at the front.
Great.
Oh. Right. Well, welcome to our session today. This is a session among our series for the large class playbook that's targeted to faculty and instructors who teach large courses. And our feature speakers today are Drs. Katie Hosbane, Liz Barnes, and Janelle Hensey, and they're going to talk about utilizing teaching assistants in their classes that they're teaching in the project that they've been doing. So welcome to these fine folks today. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here. So I'm going to start us off just talking a little bit about the history of the program and the benefits of the program. Janelle's going to talk a little bit about what LAs do in the class and how they're trained. And then Katie's going to show some stuff on LAs in action and work with that. Okay, so to start us off, I actually wanted to take a minute for us to get to know each other a little bit and to think about this whole workshop series is about struggles with large enrollment classes and how to implement teaching to help with those struggles. And so we wanted to get an idea of some of those struggles that you might have. Oh, there's Greg. Hi, Greg. We wanted to get an idea of some of the struggles that you might have or you might see others have when teaching or learning in large enrollment courses.
And I'm just gonna share for the Zoom people.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Now they can see better.
All right, Zoom folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can share your ideas in the chat. We're just going to talk about first get to know each other with your name, discipline, classes taught, and then just some struggles that you've seen others or yourself have in teaching and learning in large enrollment classes. Hello, welcome. Good to see you. All right, okay, so we have 3 tables here, so why don't you all talk amongst yourself, introduce yourself, and then we'll take a few minutes, and after those few minutes, we'll share out the ideas that each of you have at each of your tables. For those of you who just came in, you're going to be talking about the struggles that you or others have had when teaching or learning in large enrollment classes.
Hi, Angela, I'm Jennifer.
What struggles they have?
Classroom control.
So what's your discipline? Biology. And what's your name? Mary. What's your discipline?
Coming up with more assignments.
I am not biology. I'm
My
Jennifer
name
and
is
I'm my
Ramsey.
field is
I'm
education.
mathematics classification. I have my
Oh,
first
yeah.
one is my
Yeah, I
class
had
is
like
11,
like
10
10
online.
Okay, great.
Was it
And
was there?
lab.
do you
What
think
classes
there were
taught you?
like, do you think it's like?
Uh-huh. Okay, great.
Well, we
I'm
had
sorry.
the Zen lecture,
And at the
biggest
time,
one
like
is
how
have
much
like
today?
special sessions throughout the
yeah.
week that was
Um,
asked for. Yeah, and
And I taught a huge
yeah,
section
those
of
were
our
sections
What-
that
first
we set
class.
at the front.
Your
in the
class.
back.
I'm not currently teaching.
So in physics, I would actually sit in the back of the class. Chemistry would be in the
How big
front.
can it get?
Oh my God, as we said,
The
then it
largest
gets,
we had to date was 300 in our concert hall. The section I taught was 150. So half of that, but still plenty of bodies in the room, right?
Area that you can walk. But it's really long. Yeah. Yeah, this is. Those type of classes often are long. Because I think it's really hard.
Better.
I'm Kate. I am also an MSc PhD
Yeah, with
student.
groups that large,
I teach bio 110
how do you make
and bio
this?
1031, so I teach veterinary and lab.
Encourage that.
Lecture for us.
Even my group of 30
Now.
students,
The
like
smallest
I'll
was 63
give them a
that
problem.
I can remember.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges in the large classes, getting to know
I'll
and
see like
building
half the class
rapport
writing.
with all those
You know,
students
yeah.
because
And there
there's
has
so
to be
many
somebody who really
students,
gives
and
them-
how do you
Yeah.
do that in a way that doesn't rob you of instructional time, right?
Frustrating, trying to convince that group that you're struggling.
amount
They struggle, in my opinion, they struggle because they don't practice.
All right, let's take just one more minute to finish up this conversation and I'll share out.
Our sources are definitely different. That's a shock. I came from a school where hard 20. So getting thrown in front of a class.
Yeah, a lot of times they
Yeah, I think that, for sure, the serious ones that about literally being.
Yeah, it's like.
Focus on the those ones.
Me and Mike as well. I'm not teaching right now, but.
Really big. Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know what's on their head, like I can't even see their like newly expression. And then like, I don't know if they're engaging themselves, you know, like.
All right, it sounds like you guys could probably talk for another 5 or 10 minutes about this, so thank you so much for your interaction. But let's go ahead and get an idea of what each of the tables talked about. Who is willing to share first some of the ideas that came up? And I'm gonna put them down here so we can see them all.
So we had 2 different things. One of them is how do you keep your students actually, both of them are related to engagement, interested and engaged? Especially when you've got students in the front that are, you know, you're good students, the ones that are paying attention, and then you've got ones in the back that are just waiting for you to tell them the answers.
Yeah.
And then my other side part of that is how do you even get to them?
Oh.
Physical logistics.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I think that I've definitely experienced that too in larger classes. Students feel a lot more comfortable kind of like retreating into themselves and just staying silent and may not be as engaged, right? We had some ideas here online that I wanted to share. So Jen Caputo is here from Exercise Science, and she said getting students comfortable speaking up, right, is a problem, often not related to content, but just if you're speaking in large groups.
You need a G or an apostrophe. Yeah, speaking.
There you go. What about, did you guys talk about anything you'd like to share?
We talked about various forms of assessment, so kind of grappling with
Your
the volume of assessment, because you have large enrollment, and then types of assessment you can do is limited sometimes. We also did engagement and physically getting to all the students as well.
And Dean Van Patten is also citing here in the chat that just checking in with individual students. So that is along the lines of assessing learning, but that individual, like, come and see me so we can go over this, whatever, assignment or test.
So individualization too is difficult. Yes, and I was gonna get to Greg, don't worry, I just wanted to kind of go in between. Was there something else?
Is, you know, that the student can't be invisible if they're in a small group. So it's about community and connection too.
Building community, yeah, I think that
Like
that
students in
is.
smaller classes know that you're gonna miss them. And know that they're not there. Whereas in a big class, you're kind of invisible sometimes.
They get surprised if I know they're gone in a big class.
Yeah.
What about over here?
We talked about the individualization and like assessing learning as well, but we also talked about classroom management.
Can you say more about that?
Trying to, I mean, even in large lecture halls, like even being able to hear when students can be disruptive to each other, if they're like all the way in the back and they're disrupting students 3 rows from the back, but you're 20 rows, so you can't hear that.
Yeah, going back to connecting those physical limitations too, right?
So that's just an example.
Okay.
One interesting thing mentioned was online and not being able to really tell from the facial language, facial expressions of students to know if they're engaged or not. So that online presence as well.
Yeah, good point. Okay, yeah, so we have some good ideas here that I think that I've experienced myself teaching a large enrollment course. So thank you for, and I hope that some of the things that we present today about learning assistance actually might be able to help mitigate some of these challenges that you all are experiencing or have seen other people experience in large enrollment classes. Okay, so for this workshop, we love to be clear about the learning goals of the session today. So we're gonna aim for you for at the end of this workshop to be able to describe the elements of the LA model, as well as their role in the classroom. We're gonna watch and discuss some examples of LA student interactions that Katie's gonna facilitate, and then help you plan some ways to actually incorporate LAs into your course if you so desire to in the future. All right, so first I want to just like define what LAs are, right? So learning assistants are undergraduate students that have been successful in the course previously that are then embedded back into the course to facilitate interactions in the course among students. So things like helping with active learning activities, worksheets, group work, as well as, oh, I have the chat up here. Let me go ahead and close that. As well as helping to build community in and out of the classroom, right? So checking in on students outside of class and offering hours for them to come for tutoring and support, right? Okay, and the impacts of the LA program have actually been studied pretty broadly. So this is a program that's become really popular. It's now enacted in over 140 universities because of the evidence that we have for some of the benefits of it, right? So for instance, among students, we've seen among several studies that they have greater learning gains. So they actually learn more about the concepts in the class. But also it seems to increase persistence within a course, but also persistence to graduation within a major. And some of that can be related to how it actually impacts students' sense of belonging. So, and we think some of that has to do with the community that LAs build. But really interestingly, even though these programs were first made to benefit students, we've also seen benefits to learning assistants themselves and faculty. So for instance, learning assistants actually increase their content understanding as well, because they get the opportunity to learn things again and again and have a deeper knowledge of that. It seems to increase their identity in their discipline, right? And we've even seen it increase students like science educator identity as well. And it also helps them learn effective facilitation practices, which is something they can bring into their future careers as well. But also we're seeing impacts in faculty in the literature, right? So it seems that learning assistants are somewhat of a means for change in faculty's instructional practices. So we see faculty actually adopting more evidence-based active learning practices when they incorporate LAs into the course, because that's part of their role, is to facilitate those activities, right? And we're also seeing that it's helping with faculty development and these partnerships where they're now doing collaboration in designing their teaching with other people that can give them feedback, right? So a lot of documented benefits outside of our own research and experience here. Now here at MTSU, the LA program started in spring of 2023. So Katie Hosbein and I came in and we noticed that on the heels of COVID, that MTSU community was suffering, right? And that students seemed to be less engaged. And we had known about the Learning Assistant Program and thought that would be an excellent thing to try to implement here to try to build some of that community. And we first got funding from Chem and Bio department heads and CBAS, thank you, Greg Van Patten, that was amazing. And we first implemented learning assistants just in our courses. So the big dots are individual courses, and then the little smiley faces are LAs, right? So we had our courses in Bio and Chem with 4 LAs in mine and 3 LAs in Katie's. And then the academic year 23-24, we continued to get support from our departments in the college, but Katie also submitted an MTIGO grant and got $10,000 to further support the program. So we were able to actually expand the program to 4 more courses in Bio and Chem and add 12 more LAs, which was awesome. And then in the academic year 24-25, we continued to get support from those other entities, but we were really excited that we put in a Tennessee Board of Regents grant and got $75,000 to expand the program even more. We had collected some data that I'll show you in the future slides, and that helped with that grant success. But also we connected with Janelle and started to get support from the Office of Student Success. So actually solidifying the program as an internal thing that's being supported. And as you can see, that support greatly expanded the number of courses and LAs that we were able to offer. And we even started offering it in math as well. So not just in large enrollment STEM science courses, but also in math courses as well. And then now we are here in fall 2025. We're finishing up that Tennessee Board of Regents grant and continuing to be supported by the Office of Student Success. Okay, so what are some of the impacts here? I showed you some of the impacts that have been documented in other contexts, but what about at MTSU? So one of the reasons that Katie and I were really excited to implement an LA program is that we saw the high DFW rates that were in our intro STEM gateway courses, right? So in biology, for instance, in fall 2024, the overall DFW rate was 45%. That's really high, right? And we saw big gaps between first generation students and continuing generation students. And here at MTSU, we have a significant first generation student population. right? And so that gap also concerned us, because what that means is that 51% of first generation students, if they don't pass their intro bio class, that means they either have to drop out of the major because they can't continue the next one, or they have to retake the class and pay for it. Right? A lot of our first gen students are also low income, and that's a significant financial burden to them. And in Kim, we also had high DFW rates and a gap between first gen and non-first gen students. But with LAs, what we've seen, and there's still some limitation to these data, right, that we need to account for in our future research, but the preliminary results that we're seeing are really encouraging. So with LAs, we see that DFW rate drop in biology by more than 50%, and we have almost completely closed the gap between first gen and non-first gen students. And we see some smaller but similar trends in our chemistry data as well. So that's been really encouraging to us. But also beyond DFW rates, we also see conceptual understanding increases. So in the beginning, that limitation on funding that we had actually offered us an opportunity to do a controlled study. So I was teaching 2 sections of Intro Bio 1, and we could only afford to have LAs in one of them. And so I said, well, let's make the best of a not ideal situation and let's do a controlled experiment, right? I'm gonna teach exactly the same way in both courses, but one is gonna have LAs and one is not. I have weekly quizzes in my class that test conceptual understanding. And what we saw is that in the course with LAs, students were consistently scoring higher on their quizzes. And overall, this resulted in about a 3%, so if we round up a half a letter grade, about a 3% increase in their quiz scores overall. So not just DFW rates, but also conceptual understanding. And then I think, sometimes numbers are fun. They're super convincing for people who are data driven, but a lot of us also like to see just like the personal impacts that students are saying that it's had on them. So we've collected what we call qualitative data and asked students like, how is the LA program impacting you? And these are just some quotes from students. So one student said, he even went above and beyond the LA. Even went above and beyond by sending out emails at certain points, clarifying things in class. So highlighting how LAs are providing support for them outside of class, right? And then this student talked about having the LA discuss how she made it through school, made me realize that anything is possible as long as I study and stay motivated. So this highlights some of that mechanism by which we might be seeing higher retention rates, both in courses and within the major broadly. But also, just like the literature, we've seen impacts on LAs themselves as well as faculty. So we're seeing potential impacts on LA's science identity. So this student said, I do feel like I lost my science identity a lot this year, but being in LA made me not want to lose it. Being in LA kept my development as a scientist stable. So this student was LAing for Chem 2, or for Chem 1, sorry, for Chem 1, but struggling in Chem 2. Right, and being in LA in Chem 1 was helping buffer that hard experience that she was having in Chem 2. And this one really shows how it's helping students identify as being a science educator. So being a learning assistant has allowed me to really identify with being a science educator, especially for people who look like me. It's important to see representation in the scientific field and see educators that also look like you and can understand the pressures and the accommodations that may be needed. So oftentimes us as faculty don't entirely represent the student population that we're teaching, and LAs offer some ways that we can represent students more in the classroom. So then faculty also talk about how this is impacting them. So we talked about that in the literature, that faculty LA collaborative partnership for teaching, and we see faculty talking about that here too. So this faculty said, working with LAs has made me realize the importance of collaborative teaching and how it can enhance the learning experience for both students and instructors. One faculty said that LAs are really good at helping students. They manage to keep the students on track and ensure they understand the material. So really seeing how LAs are facilitating that conceptual understanding. And then one faculty member was really excited that they saw the test beam scores higher than they've been, which they significantly contribute to the fact that there's LAs in the class, right? So we're seeing that impact across all 3 components of the program here at MTSU as well. Okay, so with that, I will hand things over to Janelle to talk a little bit more about what LAs do.
Yes, so I'm gonna have my script so I can stay on task. So I'm so excited about this program and having this program added to the things that we do here at MTSU. So a little bit about what LAs do. So LAs are assistants in the classroom. They're undergraduates who are trained. Trained is essential in that component. So they work with faculty to create a more active, collaborative, and engaging classroom. They are not tutors in the traditional sense of how we see tutors, right? But they are facilitating learning along during the class, guiding discussions and clarifying concepts and encouraging students to think critically. The LA model is built on partnership. So that partnership comes between the faculty, the students in the classroom, and then the LAs, and they're working together to strengthen the understanding and improve retention and build confidence in some of our most challenging gateway courses, as you have seen in the previous slides. So something to really point out is that our LAs are not content experts, but they are expert in the learning they are experts at learning in the course, right? So when you're thinking about students in your course who may potentially be LAs in the future, those are the things that you want to really focus in on. They're not there to grade your courses. They're not substitute teachers. They're not there to proctor your exams. And they're not TAs. So those are the essential things to remember, that you're going to use them for what they are trained to do. So in our general LA model, I'm gonna split the whole thing so I don't have to go back and forth. So our LAs are, so here we have, from the traditional sense, you'll see here the instructor to the student. We want to flip that. We want that to look a little different. We want to make sure that we're having this engagement done in this format where we're transforming with LAs. So LAs are important, an important partner in this course transformation. They help us to shift from a more passive instructor-student-centered model and to a more active student-centered model. So we're thinking about active learning in a sense. And so in that case, what we want is to think about the transforming a course with an LAs. We're really thinking about building an instructional team. A large lecture setting, it can be difficult to create space for students. What you guys talk about on that list, when we talk about student engagement or peer-to-peer learning, LAs help to bridge that gap by working directly with small groups of students. So when we talk about, hey, that engagement piece that we mentioned in our small groups, this is what can happen when you have LAs in the classroom. They can help you to build a bridge to help students to be more engaged. They can encourage discussions, so online and in the classroom. So think about that when we talked about that engagement in the online setting. And what's important to remember is that this is not a one-time transformation, right? This is a transformation that is taking place continuously with your LA teams, with your faculty, and with your students in the classroom. So helping them to be more interactive, helping them to be more effective with every student engaging, not the ones in the front, but every student being very engaged. As you can see, LA's going out, instructors also embedded in that. So how can you, even as you think of it as an instructor, you're also engaging, but here you have all this help along the way to make sure that the active learning that you're placing or putting in your classroom is building the engagements you need for teaching. So the model is a two-way model, and so therefore you'll see the arrows going in various ways. So I'm gonna press all of these things. So we have three dimensions of this. We have the practice, and this is where our LAs are interacting and relating with students. This helps them to care more about them. So that builds relationships and community, that sense of belonging we talked about earlier. Then you have LAs also engaging with that faculty member, providing that weekly prep meeting, talking about what is going to happen. So you have this ability to have these LAs in your class, but you also have them really building relationships between you and the students as well as in the instructional method of the class. And then for our faculty members and that pedagogy course. So think about it in your elements, the pedagogy that aligns with the subject content that you are dealing with as well. So you have LAs also learning how to practice those strategies and those learning theories. And that might look different for every subject matter content. And so we'll talk a little bit more about why we will need more of you to be engaged in this process. But these are the three essential elements. They're going back and forth and they're actually engaging with each other. So you have practice, you have the weekly prep meetings that are going on. Remember, we said that LAs are undergraduates who are trained. And so they're trained weekly, and then they're also connected to that pedagogy related to your course content. So that's additional learning that they are engaging with as well. So let's think about practice and focus in on what that is. So you see here that our LAs facilitate small group learning through challenging group-worthy activities. So you want to make sure, as we will talk about in a minute, that you are creating the right amount of active learning in your class to facilitate that engagement. And then our LAs connect and build relationship with students that enhance their sense of belonging, self-efficacy, I'm seeing myself in this, and that motivation within and outside of the courses. And so you have these additional aids in those large classes to help build the things that you need for all students. So in practice, this is just a visual format of what it can look like when you are engaging with the LAs. So you can see here where you'll have, for some classroom settings, you may have students who are actively engaging. Now remember, LAs are not giving answers, right? They're helping you to think critically throughout the process. So they're in there actually helping to strategize and help students to look at what is the next step and how do I directly help that student to get to that next step. But we're not sitting there telling them, oh, that's the answer, or that's not the answer. They're really helping students to think about how they're thinking. And then you can see here, normally in those large formatted classrooms, you can see where LAs may be embedded around helping and students in that sense. I know you're thinking maybe about your classroom and how would that work in your classroom, but these are different elements that you may see in the classroom. And then there are some videos that may help you really see that engagement in action. For the online course, what we're seeing is students, LAs really working with those discussion elements in the online world. So how are, we're making sure that those discussions are created in a way where our LAs are embedded in a sense that they're engaging with those students through those discussions. And so it may be where we have that tag going on from student to student, but then you have that LA also engaged in there to make sure that that discussion is running the way it needs to be run. And it's not just this passive, let me just respond, but it's this engaging interaction between students who are in the classroom and students who are in that online environment. See, I need to stick to my step, to my script, because I'm gonna start going off script like I have already. But here, when we talk about this zone of proximal development, this is the sweet spot we're talking about here, right? We know what students can do. So we don't wanna really focus in on that, but we don't wanna really focus so deep on what students can't do, that challenging piece, right? So you wanna think about that sweet spot right there when you're developing those active learning processes for your student, and you want to make sure that it is not boring and it won't create failure. But how can we get in that sweet spot where students can begin to think in a way where they can gain knowledge? And that is where you have that effective learning taking place. So I'm not frustrated because I did not get it right. I don't understand this thing. That means that it takes time. So you always want to go back and redevelop and look at things, but working with your LAs, they can really tell you what the challenges are. But you want to get right here to this sweet spot right here where your students can engage in those practices and they can feel like they're making tractions within your classroom. And then they have that LA to help stimulate what that learning is needed the learning that needs to take place and guide it through that process. So when you think about that in practice, this is what it really looks like. So if we're in that sweet spot of the zone of proximal development, you first let your learners figure it out. Let them spend some time being challenged on their own. But in that process, you also have your LAs moving around, right? They are engaged, they are listening, they are sharing ideas, they are probably helping to pique the learner's interest in to say, hey, this is where you may want to go next. And then you have your LAs begin assisting the learners, not giving the answers, but prompting them in a way because you remember they're trained. So they'll have the skills to know, hey, how do I guide them in this process? So that they'll know exactly how to move that students from this place to that sweet spot. And so that is what the LAs are doing. And then at the next place, we have LAs encouraging learners to collaborate with other learners to problem solve. So again, if Janelle doesn't know the answer to it, then I may just sit next to Katie and say, Katie, I'm kind of struggling with this. What do you think it is that so you give them the opportunity to practice how they are formulating their strategies of thinking. And then you have the LA who is there to also say, oh, I did, to guide that, to prompt that, to help them to really go in the direction. And that kind of helps to alleviate the frustration that we may see sometimes on our students, and then sometimes we don't see those. All right, so beyond the in the classroom interaction, we do have our LAs using discussion boards and text-based apps to help engage students. So they do have some time outside of the classroom where students can engage with them in meaningful ways as well. And so those are some of the things that we can have done. I don't know if I'm following my slide the right way. Am I on the right task? Okay, good. So those are some of the things that we definitely have embedded. So even if you're in the classroom, there's that built-in 1 hour outside of the classroom where you may have find your LA can say, hey, Sarah, come to my 1 hour session. Let's think through this a little more deeper. Let's see exactly where it is that we can really build some momentum in order for you to be successful through the course. So that is also an important component to remember with this process. So again, some of the things that we see here with our LAs and the roles that they have in and outside of the classroom. LAs are facilitating student-to-student interaction. So they're helping students to articulate their ideas, support students to expressing themselves. But also they're that air, you think about it, the things that you don't see as a faculty member, they're also there to help you to see those things as well. And I think that's a great thing. And so LAs, they provide that feedback and guidance to students, but also to their faculty member. They foster positive relationship with students, and they help students feel comfortable sharing. And other things that LAs bring into the perspective and the instructional team, they anticipate students' thinking, beta test activity, and give insight into students' work. So that's a win-win. I know we all right now saying, I need an LA. So if you need an LA, that means that we want you to think about these things as well. LAs at MTSU, of course, we pay them $15 an hour, 8 hours per week, right? So 3 hours is facilitating in that lecture classroom, and then they have an hour of prep time with the instructor. They have an hour of prep time on their own, and they have that pedagogy class, pedagogy prep, and then the support community building with students outside of the classroom. So this is how it is set up and is structured for those students. So 8 hours per week, $15 per hour. Start calculating in your budget how you can fill this in, because we want you to have LAs as well. All right, thank you. I'm gonna turn it over to Katie.
Awesome. So today in this workshop, we're focusing on the practice aspect. So if you're interested in the pedagogy or those weekly meetings, we're happy to talk about those at a different time. You can follow up. But we're gonna observe an LA in action. So this is actually an online course, and my colleague at Tufts, Ira Kaspari, has done a lot of research with LAs. And so this is one of, I actually don't know where it is, but it is her research, and it was funded by NSF. So ignore some of these things that I was going to erase, but we're gonna watch this video And before we watch it,
It's gonna be like
see
a.
the sound, okay, sound is working. So as you watch, kind of reflect on these. If you forget them, that's okay, we'll bring them back. But just what is the LA doing in this interaction? What are they doing? What are they not doing? And how is this similar to things that you see as an instructor, or maybe you've seen instructors interact with students? What type of support and prep would they need to be effective as an LA in this setting? And then what types of skills will the LA need to develop to successfully interact with students in the classroom? So like the support and prep they need, and then the skills that they'd actually have to enact. So think about those things as you're watching this video. And I think I might have to share.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I will stop share and then share again. I haven't used Zoom in this way in a while. Okay. All right. So let's watch this, and I might need to turn is the audio, it's on the computer? Yeah. One thing, sorry. This is also a chemistry course, and they're working on a kinetics problem. You don't really need to understand what is happening with the problem, but just see how this facilitation is happening.
Sort of like twice as much. Yeah, what if that makes sense? For the
Would be like leveling out, because you're getting rid of, like, you're going to the product, so it's gonna be less and less O2. Is that what you mean, or the other way around?
Yeah, or well, concentration. Yeah, it would be, I guess it would be like decreasing and then.
Like, okay.
A little bit, but.
For the reaction.
The rate increases as the concentration of O2 increases. So, but if we're just saying, like, at a certain rate, like, like, say that the rate is fixed, like, if we're working with just, like, one specific rate, then, like, how is the concentration gonna change over time? If that makes sense. Or, like, that's not a good way of explaining it. Like, they're two separate, like, yeah, that's not a good way. Yeah, not a good way of explaining it, but. Sort of. I think I was originally saying that, but I don't think that's actually. If the concentration changes over time, that is going to cause the rate to change. So.
Second one, right? Because that would be think of O2 going to 2O as time goes on. You're directly watching how the concentration of O2 changes, which it would be doing in an actual reaction, I guess.
Yeah.
So maybe it would be like a. Sorry, go ahead. If we're just thinking of it like we're monitoring the actual reaction, then I feel like it would be like a logarithmic type curve. Because that's the reactants going to the product, it's going to equilibrium.
So like this? That's not a good shape, but I'll fix it. I'll make it look prettier.
I think so. Yeah,
I can agree with that because. Yeah, because then if we were thinking of the ones where like it shows both, then like I'll undo this.
Okay, how many of you felt really awkward watching that? Anybody? Like, so I love showing that because I think that is a common reaction people have. They're like, oh, this is so uncomfortable. Oh no. And let me tell you, that's learning. Like, it's really uncomfortable. And students really sometimes don't want to do it. So I want you to talk, and if you're online, oh, I need to share again. If you're online, then put some ideas in the chat, so reflect a bit and put some ideas in the chat. And we're gonna talk in person and for a few minutes, not 15, and then we will talk about these questions. So reflect on the questions on the screen.
Right, yes. What does LA do and not do? Doesn't the right answer? He obviously knows that students listening because of that cognitive leading students.
Yeah, we need to set a step and let me ask you this. Which we are-
Even when they did their fun, like.
I said, okay, like,
Right,
well,
right.
Yeah. It was a focus question.
That's really
The
student
observers,
driven instruction.
those that just in better on with the questions.
And even like
How are you getting that?
when you offering or like
But I think I hear.
Yeah, so what type of support preparation? I perceive that there's quite a bit of training for the LAs in questioning technique, in read time, and how to ask those second and third questions, which are often getting at the higher cognitive level thinking skills, where you're trying to more than recall and remember, it's really applying or synthesizing or whatever.
but I think like.
But he also asked, kind of like confirming what they asked, like, do you referring to the first draft or second draft? The clarifying.
What type of skills do the LAs need, active listening, right? Like just, let me just hear you figure this out, and be really, really quiet.
I do think it's skills that they use online is classroom.
Accordingly, right?
You still have one student.
And be kind of, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
Even
When
when
one
one
I'm
of
comfortable with not being in charge,
about to
right?
talk.
Well, you just, he tried, he tried.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he didn't.
No,
try,
no,
but I'm
no,
saying
yeah.
that that's
If somebody's talking at them,
that's not usually something people are
And you can circle back, like
Yeah.
after whoever is like, oh, like, can you reword what
But I
you were
think the
saying?
second question, what kind of,
Yeah, for sure.
they need to know what type of, you say, effective struggling, what do you say again? Productive struggling and non-productive struggling.
Right.
They need to know,
Be okay with being wrong.
yeah, what type of struggling it is.
Yeah, like how look for.
Yeah, the emphasis is
Take another
more on
30
the
seconds or so.
process. It is the grade, like we're such a grade driven culture, like that's just gonna set my grade. You know, it's just not the next.
Yeah, so it doesn't let them say something vague
You're learning.
and just.
It's about
Saying something
struggling
in the right.
in the beginning.
No
so
more.
the better ends it.
It's good.
All right. Okay, let's share out. So would you like to, is there anybody online? If there's anything online, you can help me with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But does anybody want to share?
I can share Dr. Kahuda's
Yeah, sure.
perspective from the Zoom room. She says the LA did not provide the answers, instead directed the students. LA also asked for clarification and input from the other students. The LA would need to know how far to let students stray. This is in response to question 2. How far to let students stray prior to kind of interjecting and redirecting their thinking. And LA would also need to be comfortable with content. Discussion of common errors would be helpful to have with the LA prior to the class. And then finally, the LA would need to be confident to feel comfortable stepping in and guiding. And she says listening skills are also critical. So I'd see a lot of people shaking their heads. It seems to mirror some of the in the person conversations.
Anybody want to add? Yeah.
So another thing that we mentioned on our table is the fact that the LA is nodding to show an effective engagement so that it won't be like, oh, is it there or not?
Two other specific things that we talked about was how the LA was able to like try to foster engagement from like the one student seemed maybe a little bit less engaged, and so he was like, hey, can you explain that a little more? I don't know if it, it's on Zoom, so lagging and stuff can kind of make that hard. But that was a cool example. And then also, even when they were like he was trying to guide them to the correct answer, instead of just confirming or denying whether something they said was correct, they were like, what do you guys think about this? Like, do you agree? And kind of allowing them to collaborate to build their own collective like assessment of whether that was the right or wrong answer.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything else?
We also mentioned a little bit about the wait time.
Yeah, it's awkward.
Yeah.
It's real awkward. Trying to get LAs to do that is hard, but we just keep trying to say it's practice. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. Trying to get instructors to do that is hard.
Yeah,
Right?
sure. Absolutely.
Or being able to see the signs of frustration that tell you they're struggling is not productive at that point.
Yeah, so I had LAs watch this a couple of years ago, and one of them was like, I asked what the LA was not doing. He's like, well, I would have interjected way earlier. And I was like, no, like actually no, like you want them to keep talking so that you can assess kind of the direction they're going, so you can tell if they're getting off track and bring them back. Yeah, anything else?
We have another Zoom participant in response to question 2 that says LAs would need to have preparation and training in not only content knowledge, but also how to lead students toward right ideas, yet not giving the answers. Like, how do you facilitate a direction toward right without them going too far off the rails?
Yeah.
Like helping them focus on which graph to talk about. Like that was a good example of that.
He also used revoicing. He said, what I think he said was, and tried to repeat what the person said in a slightly different way.
You can tell that Heather trains teachers.
Yeah, they might need examples of different like talk moves they can use.
It's almost like you've seen those before, Jay.
Yeah, I forgot, we probably should mention that we have a prior LA in the room.
And Travis is on the Zoom.
Oh, yeah, and Travis is on the Zoom.
Is there anything else on Zoom or anything? So we do, the skills that you all mentioned are things we work on in the pedagogy class. And so the content mostly comes from that weekly meeting with the professor or the instructor, where they will go over what they're going to be doing that week. And they can say, this is kind of how like the thing I want them to get. These are common misconceptions. And the students can say, oh yeah, I remember this, or this way you worded this is confusing. Maybe they'll also struggle here. And the professor's like, oh, I didn't think of that word as being confusing, but that's the point, is that they don't see that anymore. And then they also are trained in guiding moves. So we use a list of talk moves as things like tell me more. We also have a handout of different strategies, so like revoicing, like you're repeating what the student said, making sure that they then can expand upon it or move forward in a way. And so we also do emphasize like the LAs need to know a bit about the content, but they don't have to be experts, because even in that session, if they hadn't gotten to the right answer, the point is that they're talking about their ideas. And then when the class comes back as a whole, the instructor will clarify that answer. So the LAs, even if they're kind of lost and struggling sometimes at like, when do I cut them off? Are they getting too far off topic? It's just encouraging them to share their ideas with each other so that they can turn it around sometimes, or they can just get clarification from the instructor when they come back as a group. And so it's really trying to get them to be vulnerable, which is something that's really hard. Some students will open up, but sometimes we just don't get them. We're still working on that. Like, how do we really engage? So we only have a few minutes left. So let me just see how long this video is, because we're not going to really do much with this. Okay, it's like 6 minutes, but one thing that we're not going to show this because I would rather have you all, excuse me. Rather have you all reflect on how you could work with them in your course. But before we move on to that, LAs don't just provide content guidance, they also provide this socio-emotional support. So they are there to help your students be able to be vulnerable and sharing their ideas. They're there to say, man, I remember this was so hard. I felt so stupid doing this too. Like relating to students so that they know that this, like the feeling uncomfortable is normal. The feeling of frustration is normal, and how LAs guide them and how to get over that, like socio-emotionally, like being like, yeah, this is a normal feeling and we're gonna push through it. Sometimes if LAs have a hard time getting students to engage, I tell them to just ask them how their day is going. So instead of saying, oh, are you doing the problem? And being this like authority figure, it's like, how's your day going? Like, just how are you doing as a person? Because a lot of our students sometimes can't engage because they have other stuff going on. And that's okay sometimes. We don't want them to do that every class, but it's okay. So LAs are there to provide that socio-emotional support as well. And we train them of like, what does it look like? What active learning strategies can impact those that have depression and anxiety? What are some things that can actually heighten those? And how can we alleviate that? Because like we know that cold calling students in a class of 200 induces a lot of anxiety that isn't productive. So how can we work with some of these strategies in a way that is balanced for different types of people? So what we'd like to do in the last 3 minutes is kind of have you reflect on just how you would use LAs in your course. What would the use be for you? Because you're working with LAs, you're not using them as a TA. These are really LAs are part of the instructional team, and we're working on slowly growing our program. Some of that limitation comes with training. Right now, I do all the training, so I hold 2 sessions a week. And I am comfortable training most STEM students, but if we are in other departments like journalism, I don't have some of those context specific things that students may run into with the content. So having those that can partner with me to think about the pedagogy and then also the content and have their own training with LAs would be wonderful. And it's an hour training a week, so I spend 2 hours a week with LAs. And the training really is not a ton of prep. It's really having the LAs reflect. So it's very fun to teach and watch them grow and reflect. And it's fun having Jay. Yeah. So let's just take a minute or so to reflect. Share out.
I have 2 right now.
I like to know.
They come to class, I mean, they're doing their part. Because that's exactly how I use them. Is that in LA? Okay. So I was
During class.
That's what I have.
Even if it's not like as a
Like 100 people and my administrator trying to get around to everyone who's working slower. It's just a lot faster.
All right, I know that was really short. I'm sorry, because we've got just a minute, but does anyone want to maybe reason out loud how they use LAs? Our last minute? No, you're fine. I know that was super short. Does anybody, like, as you've been thinking, are there ways that you've been thinking you could use LAs in your course? I know there's a lot of grad students in here too that don't have courses, so.
One thing I was thinking about is the component where LAs allow instructors to have a finer grained assessment of how students are doing in the course. So maybe even just having LAs like take notes as they're interacting with students about like problems they're noticing, or putting that into like some sort of reflection form to aggregate for the instructor, more so than they may be able to do in just like a on the spot after a class debrief.
So one of our instructors uses money as points cards. So they'll have the students turn it in at the end and then the LAs compile that. And so we do see that as distinct from a TA because we think it's like giving them reflection of their teaching and not just another task. It's like it's meaningful tasks, if that makes sense. Yeah. So but that's a good idea to have them write their own reflections. Yeah.
If there are faculty in other departments outside of CBAS area that are interested in this and they want to partner or collaborate and implement something to scale in their department or their college, are you all willing to share some of your resources, like your some things that you mentioned there with the talking points and the strategies for your TAs.
So a lot of our materials that we use are through the LA Alliance at CU Boulder. And so you can sign up for a free account with them and they have so many resources. Like these activities are on there. We brought a sign up sheet if anybody, so online, if you are interested in knowing more or interested in becoming a partner, if you'll just include your department and email and the courses that you teach that you would think about having LAs, that would be really helpful because we can reach out then with resources or just to see what the interest is. Yeah.
And if you also have like, if you have other types of, like if you have an SI or a tutor in the class and you feel like as if this model will work better for you, then we can also train in that sense of saying, hey, I know I have this or that, but I really think that this LA model will really work well for my classroom, then consider that as well. So you can always change things around as you know.
And for instructors that are interested too, we've kind of piloted this as a low entry to active learning. So some of the instructors weren't doing too many things that were active in the course. So when we started working with them, we said, we just want you to work in 10 minutes of a class where LAs and students are interacting. If there's some classes they don't, like that's okay, but just a goal of this like low barrier entry to trying these things, the LAs can really give feedback. And maybe if there's a time where they're not interacting, they're taking notes on like, this part in the lecture was confusing. So that they're doing something during the class, but we really want to build that community among students and LAs. Yeah.
Wow, thank you all so much for your presentation today. Thank you to the
Zoom room. Thank you, guys.
And we're happy to answer any other questions. I can stay for a little bit to talk to folks if they want. Our sign up sheet is right here. So please add your name and department if you're interested in potentially working with LAs.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah, I would have to.